Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Early Line on this Friday, live in person, in studio, and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. It bears repeating because we are live in studio on this Friday. He is DRS, Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. 3 hours together up until 11 a.m. Eastern time, where Donnie, our task is to recap and react to everything we saw last night in Detroit. The opening night, round number 1 of the 2024 NFL Draft. There were some stunners, like, what are you doing, Atlanta? Do the Buffalo Bills even like the wide receiver position? And, of course, some great nights as well that will shape the future of franchises around the National Football League, hopefully for these organizations, Donnie, for years to come. Triple header Thursday night around the association. Game threes, and a change of venue for the first time in the NBA playoffs. Some action on the ice. Major League Baseball continues with a shorter slate on a Thursday. 3 hours in person, in studio on a Friday. Vibes are high.
Vibes high, energy high at this point here. And usually it's Al Davis, Ben, that gives us those, what the heck is going on out here in these streets in the NFL draft? But yesterday it was the Atlanta Falcons. And also, as Ben pointed out, an unbelievable night in the NBA. Could it be that the Denver Nuggets will beat the Los Angeles Lakers for the next 50 years straight? It feels that way. But so many great topics to go over, because the great thing about this, Ben, is we're going to recap a lot of stuff today. But a monster weekend ahead. The boys will be back in studio again tonight for the NFL draft. I mean, so much to go over. This is the energy we need. We got to bring it today.
It was just night number 1 in round number 1. The first 32 picks in the Motor City for the 2024 NFL draft. And it was the first round last night. But day 2, night 2, rounds 2 and 3 tonight. Rounds 4 through 7 concludes the weekend tomorrow on a Saturday afternoon. So here's the structure of this opening hour. A full-blown breakdown and recap of everything we saw in the opening round last night in Detroit for the 2024 NFL Draft. And then in the tail end of this hour, a recap of all 3 games around the association in the NBA playoffs. So, Donnie, let's start with the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft, and let's start at the very top. Number 1 overall, the Chicago Bears made what was expected official. Caleb Williams, the first overall pick of the 2024 NFL Draft. He closed DRS as a minus 100,000 favorite. I'm not sure those odds were even allowed to be posted, but last night they were. A virtual guarantee, officially a guarantee. Chicago drafts Caleb Williams, the 2022 Heisman Trophy winner, hoping to forever change the direction of the franchise in the Windy City.
9 times out of 10 in the NFL, you're not going to go very far without a dominant quarterback, and that certainly is for sure. You take a look at the Chicago Bears that have been searching for that star quarterback for, it seems like, decades at this point now. Ben, I think they got it. And also keep in mind, it's not so much we take a look at Major League Baseball or even the NHL or other sports. Hey, you got to be bad for 4 to 5 years before you can turn it around and stock draft picks up. That's not the way the NFL is designed. That's what we love about this. Make a good move last year, which the Bears did. Have an average to below average season, still wind up with a top 10 pick. That's yours, and also the number 1 overall pick, which was from a trade last year. They are set up for absolute greatness. And by the way, Ben, expectations aren't for, hey, rookie quarterback, let's see. He is surrounded by talent. Yeah, let's see what the record is. They should be making the playoffs this year.
The Bears have invested entering 2024. It's year number 3 of the Matt Eberflus era. The expectation, DRS, is not 7 wins and be competitive. It's an above 500 record. It's a playoff spot in the NFC. We'll give out some draft grades and what it meant last night in the opening round, but let's continue to take you through the picks. It was a heavy quarterback night, as we will show you, and as was expected from the odds makers at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Quarterbacks go 1, 2, and 3. Jaden Daniels, the second overall selection made by the Washington Commanders. There was some conversation in the past few weeks that New England was looking to shop that third overall pick. The Pats stay put, and they take Drake May, the quarterback, out of North Carolina. For those QBs to go in that exact order, Caleb 1, Jaden 2, Drake 3, was that expected outcome, a closing price at minus 290. Marvin Harrison Jr., nearly a $4 favorite at 4th overall. He goes to the Arizona Cardinals, the Blitnikoff Award winner last season in college football as the best wide receiver out of Ohio State. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the 4th overall selection made by the Arizona Cardinals. In the first kind of surprise, just based on the position, was the LA Chargers remaining where they were at 5th overall DRS, but focusing on the offensive line, taking Joe Alt, the outstanding offensive tackle out of Notre Dame.
You can't fault that at all. You're looking at a guy that probably could be in the NFL here, Ben, for what, 10 to 15 years at this point and be that true anchor. You already have a great quarterback. Why not protect him here? And also, entering into the horrible era back in the NFL again, what do they like to do when the 49ers back then? You're going to run the football, you know that, but you need to have a great offensive line to get that play-action pass, give your quarterback an extra second here. I like that pick. And also, just going over the top 5 picks by itself, that's what should have happened here.
Sure.
I don't think anybody's going to say, wow, I can't believe that pick happened, or that's not what was going to take place. We thought we might get some fireworks there with some trade deals. Yeah. That didn't happen. But if I'm looking at the top 5, that was exactly the way I thought it would go.
And the only reason Joe Alt was a slight surprise for the Bolts at 5 is because he wasn't slotted in there, and we thought Los Angeles might be on the move. In fact, we thought we would see a shuffling of teams at the top more frequently than we did, at least in the top 5. But Joe Alt was minus 430 to be the first offensive lineman taken, and that's what he was. Now let's go 6 through 10.
Here we go.
At 8th overall, we'll get to the stunner for the Atlanta Falcons. But 6th overall, the New York Giants remain where they were. They take the wide receiver out of LSU, Malik Neighbors. He was a hefty favorite to be the second wide receiver selected in the 2024 NFL Draft behind Marvin Harrison Jr. J.C. Latham, after Joe Alt, goes 5th. The offensive tackle out of Alabama goes 7th overall to Tennessee. Let's work around 8 for just a second. Roma Dunze falls into the lap of the Chicago Bears with their second pick in the top 10. What a wonderful franchise-changing night for Chicago. And the Vikings move up by a spot. Only one spot to get their guy in the hopeful face of the franchise at the quarterback position, J.J. McCarthy.
Look, and yes, we are going to hit that number 8 pick because really that's the centerpiece of this. But just working around it, we're going to get to some winners and losers of the draft. And it's hard to say you have a top 10 pick and you picked a great player, but why is that a loser move? The New York Giants, what do they need? What does everybody need to win in the NFL? It's a franchise quarterback. And right now, Ben, they don't have a franchise quarterback. They have a wide receiver. Remember they had Odell Beckham Jr.? That should have been a bearing fruits of let's make multiple runs to the NFC Championship game and a Super Bowl because of his talent. But you never could get there here. You need the quarterback that's going to be there 10 to 15 years that's going to command that locker room. Daniel Jones playing with a great wide receiver doesn't make sense to me. 15 touchdown passes, maybe 20. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. So from those picks, Ben, from 6 to 10, the only one that I had an issue with outside of the one we're going to talk about here is obviously Malik Neighbors.
And there was some thought that the G-men might be able to move up, and we're interested in guys like Drake May or even a J.J. McCarthy. So when things fell that New York could remain and J.J. McCarthy was still on the board, there was an expectation they would look to the future. Instead, they looked to the wide receiver position and get Malik Neighbors out of LSU. All right, let's not bury the lead any longer. The stunner of the night in the opening round was made by the Atlanta Falcons. After signing Kirk Cousins earlier this offseason, after free agency began, to the blockbuster deal, 4-year, $180 million contract, $100 million guaranteed up front. The Atlanta Falcons, with the 8th overall pick, select Michael Penix Jr. Donnie, here in studio on our SportsGrid draft special, everybody was stunned, shocked. What was your reaction to when the Falcons called the name of Michael Penix Jr. at 8th overall?
Finally, we got something to talk about, and from all the trades and the moves that we anticipated, we got something that we can sink our teeth into, because it's not as if, and throughout the whole draft process for me, Ben, I always wondered why Michael Penix was sort of getting that back seat. Phenomenal college football player, and then he shows up in his workouts and runs a 4.5 40. Like, what's not to like about this guy? Well, obviously, he could have been a top 10 quarterback and was. It was the fact that he went to the Atlanta Falcons. If the Falcons never had Kirk Cousins and needed a quarterback, everybody would look at them like, that makes some sense. That's their guy. Didn't have to trade up and get him. That's exactly, they're going to be happy. But the fact that you paid a quarterback $100 million in guaranteed money, and also, Penix isn't 19 years old coming into the NFL either, Ben. We got a lot to talk about.
Plenty of reaction about the quarterbacks up next here on the early line.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy, in the first half of the first round. You clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you for the rest. Oh, yes! There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, well, let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been there a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Continued recap and reaction from the opening night of the 2024 NFL Draft, the first round on a Thursday out in the Motor City. In DRS, we saw history yesterday in the 2024 NFL Draft. In the modern draft era, that dates back to 1997, the 7-round format in this structure that we have annually now around the National Football League. The most quarterbacks entering last night we had ever seen in the first round was 5. We saw 6 last night. We showed you 5 of the 6 already. All 6 QBs went in the top 12. That includes Bo Nix at 12th overall to the Denver Broncos. We'll have many thoughts about all of these quarterbacks and how they project in their new organization. Who is going to have success at this next level now in the National Football League, and can they be expected to change the direction of their franchise? That's what you do when you spend a first-round pick on a quarterback. But we continue our main reaction to what the Falcons did at 8th overall. Again, signing Kirk Cousins in the main blockbuster deal we saw as free agency opened at the beginning of March in the National Football League. 4-year, $180 million deal with $100 million guaranteed for Kirk Cousins, to only at 8th overall last night select Michael Penix Jr. A move that stunned everybody following the NFL Draft. Donnie, is there any reason that you can point to why Atlanta made this move?
No, I can't point to any reason at all, because you can't even equate it, Ben, to like, oh, we got buyer's remorse. We took a flyer on Kirk Cousins. 1 year, $7 million. We promised him he'd be the starting quarterback. We'll say he's going to get a chance in camp, but he sees the writing on the wall. Kirk Cousins, if healthy, is a dominant weapon at quarterback in the NFL. And yes, you can't say that everybody's going to be Tom Brady and play into their mid-40s, but he's got at least 3 to 4 good years left, which means you might not even get Michael Penix on the field. And some people are like, well, that's a win then, because that means Kirk Cousins. No, it's not a win, because what we were setting up for the Atlanta Falcons was, I wonder where they go with this pick. They need help on defense, but also, could they just take it from that NFL perspective now? We are just going to overwhelm you with weapons on offense. We got our quarterback. We got a great young tight end, a great young wide receiver, a dynamic running back. Let's just say Roma Dunze, we take him at 8. You know what I'm thinking again as we talked it through this week? Oh, my goodness. Give me the team totals. Give me overs. Yeah. They're going to be playing in domes. This is going to be an offense that is going to be so much fun to watch and so much spread around here. And then we got a player that's not going to help you out. And also, Ben, keep in mind, it's not so much that what the Atlanta Falcons think. Kirk Cousins and his agent already last night, rightfully so. Yeah. Hey, got the phone call last night. What is this? Like, am I your franchise guy or not? You drafted the franchise guy. I thought I was going to be that guy. That's not good vibes in the locker room. That's not what you're supposed to do.
And, Donnie, you see the statement there from Mike McCartney. No, not Mike McCarthy, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, but Kirk Cousins' agent, Mike McCartney in a statement he released to NFL Network's Mike Garafolo that said, quote, "Yes, it was a big surprise. We had no idea this was coming. The truth is the whole league had no idea this was coming. We got no heads up. Kirk got a call from the Falcons when they were on the clock. That was the first we heard. It never came up in any conversation." So it's fair to say the reaction for Kirk Cousins is less than pleased that Atlanta made this move. And maybe less than pleased is too nice. He should be furious. He should be absolutely mad out of his mind that the Falcons would do this. And this is not a statement on Michael Penix Jr., who I have been a fan of since his days in Bloomington, Indiana, at the helm of the Hoosiers offense for IU. But Michael Penix Jr. spent 6 years in college football, dealt with 4 significant injuries. He will be 24 years old before his rookie campaign in the National Football League. And, Donnie, although Atlanta is front-loaded in this Kirk Cousins deal, where they could get out after 2 years, if that's even the best-case scenario, even if that is the shortest timeline, and that means the Kirk Cousins 4-year, $180 million deal probably wasn't all it stacked up to be, Michael Penix Jr. is still going to be 26 years old, playing in a proven season, year number 3 of his National Football League career, before the Falcons must decide that offseason to pick up his 5th-year option of his round 1 rookie contract to see if he is the face of the franchise. And at the end of Kirk Cousins' deal right now, Michael Penix Jr. will be 28 years old. If he gets to the end of his first deal here, 5 years with Atlanta, he's going to be 29 years old. This is not a 19-year-old, 20-year-old project quarterback that maybe would benefit from a few years behind Kirk Cousins. And the explanation, frankly, from Terry Fortno, the GM of the Atlanta Falcons, was maybe even more idiotic than the actual selection itself.
Yes, and look, we're saying that Michael Penix, to me, I think is a great quarterback. Yeah. I thought he had a legitimate chance to win the Heisman, and when they said, hey, how does Michael Penix actually translate to the NFL? Very well. You watch him play. If you want to talk about one guy in college football, Ben, last year, that when you watched him play and spin the football, it's like, that guy's a pro. Look at that arm. Look at the wide receivers he's playing with. You can actually envision him being great in the NFL. But the fact of the matter is, again, bringing up that point, he's not 19 coming into the NFL. No. Boy, we're going to teach him the ropes, and by the time he's 23, he's got the keys to the franchise. And also from a team franchise itself, the Atlanta Falcons, forget about Kirk Cousins and his feelings, which is ridiculous. He's got more money than anybody knows what to do with right now. He will be just fine. But from a standpoint of, let's win this year and get on the field, I know the head coach was probably looking at this and had a feel for it, Raheem Morris, but even though he's a defensive coordinator, I guess he has to sign off on that. But he was like, man, there's some really good pass rushers on the board. We can trade down and get 2 more picks here that I can load up at a certain position. Or, again, the one that I like, the new wave of the NFL. Worry about your defense later. They'll be okay. Load up on offense. We'll score 35 points a game and see how that works out. And now you're saying, I'm Kirk Cousins. I came to Atlanta. We have a top 10 pick. Yeah. You get me another Ferrari out there. Watch me cook. And now you have a guy that I'm watching cook behind me, hoping to take my job. And am I supposed to help him out? Right. And how does this make this team better?
If Michael Penix Jr. plays by year 3, is that a good thing for the Falcons? I mean, Kirk Cousins is 36 years old, coming off a torn Achilles. Yeah. There's no statement or resonant idea that he is going to be fully ready to go or look like his former self in Minnesota at the keys of this Atlanta offense. But you're not doing this for a security blanket. Michael Penix Jr. wasn't a pick in the 3rd round or on day number 3. You spent your 8th overall draft pick, a draft pick we expected after 3 consecutive years of offensive picks in the top 10 for the Falcons. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, last year Bijan Robinson. That under defensive-minded head coach Raheem Morris, you would get the edge rusher out of Alabama, Dallas Turner, who was the favorite entering draft day to go number 8 overall. A confounding move, and we will have plenty more on it later on as we give out some draft grades. We'll look at the rest of the quarterbacks taken in the top 12. 6, in fact, a historic night around the National Football League, but also historic because of the lack of defense. We didn't see a defensive player drafted until 15th overall. That also the first time no defender taken in the top 10. A historic night in the Motor City. Our first-round reactions continue.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week.
But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
A popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you for the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Cast the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, what? Let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been here a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit, and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Count them.
Wow.
6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12 of the 2024 NFL Draft. That is the most quarterbacks we have ever seen in round number 1 in the modern draft era, dating back to 1997. The draft over-under prop for the quarterback position in the opening round was 4.5. The juice closed on the over at minus 650. You should have taken the alt line of 5.5 to the over as well. Caleb Williams at 1. Jaden Daniels at 2 to Washington. Drake May at 3 to New England. DRS quarterbacks went 1, 2, and 3 for the first time since the 2021 NFL Draft. That 2021 NFL Draft that saw 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15, only one of those guys is going to take a snap in his 4th year in the National Football League for the same organization that drafted him. It was one of one, Trevor Lawrence, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, with some questions to answer entering the 2024 NFL campaign. The reason I bring that up, Donnie, is because I ask you about these 3 guys at the top. Do you think all 3 signal callers will have success in their rookie campaign and with these franchises?
It's hard to grade as a rookie here, but let's just take a look at the talent surrounding these football players. Number one, you look at Caleb Williams. I mean, you can't picture a better franchise to go to at this point. Yeah. He is surrounded by a solid tight end, a good running game, a solid offensive line, and legitimate veteran wide receivers to go along with a very, very talented top 10 draft pick at wide receiver this year. Love what I see there. You take a look at Jaden Daniels. Say what you want. Washington does have some talent on offense, and it's a new regime coming into town here, not dealing with anything from the previous ownership groups. They wanted this guy, even though we heard that he doesn't like Topgolf. It didn't matter at that point. He probably loved Topgolf. Yeah. Maybe it was a smokescreen here. The questions come up here, and maybe it would have been questions for me, Ben, on anybody that the New England Patriots drafted there. New regime coming into town. Quarterbacks post-Tom Brady, which basically was Mac Jones, didn't work out in their favor, and now you're starting over again. But you don't have a Chicago Bears situation to step into. Hey, Drake, you're 6'4", 230 pounds. You can move around the pocket. Boy, you extend that play, our wide receivers are going to get open. I don't know if that's going to be the case for the New England Patriots on wide receivers getting open this year, this situation. So I guess it's easy to look at 1, 2, 3. The guy that was picked 3rd overall, I think, has the toughest mountain to climb because also, where are you always going to be measured up to? What did Tom Brady do? I know nobody's going to measure up to Tom Brady, but that's the level of shoes you got to fit into. Mac Jones tried it out, didn't work well at all. That's why they were drafting number 3 and took Drake May. Talent across the board, top 3, but if I'm going the guy that might struggle, rookie year, not 5 years down the road, Drake May for me.
Situational-wise, based on what the odds expect for this upcoming NFL season, New England has the lowest win total. It's 5.5. The under has a hefty amount of juice. The Patriots, the longest price at 90-1 currently to win next year's AFC NFC Championship. I believe in Drake May. I think Gerard Mayo will have success as the new head coach up in Foxborough, but not a great situation necessarily. 5 quarterbacks in the top 10, 3 wide receivers in the top 10 as well, and 2 O-linemen. 0 defensive players in the top 10 of a first round of an NFL draft for the first time in the history of the modern draft era as well. So, Marvin Harrison Jr., 4th overall to Arizona. Malik Neighbors, 6th overall to the New York Giants. You shared your thoughts on that pick. 9th overall, Rome Odunze falls into the lap of the Chicago Bears. We saw 7 wideouts taken in the first round last night, going over the pre-draft prop of 6.5, and the under had the hefty juice, so some big plus money on that over with a run late. Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, Xavier Worthy in a peculiar move by the Bills, Ricky Pearsall at 31st overall to San Francisco, and the Carolina Panthers trade with the Bills once again to get back into the first round and take Xavier Legette, the wide receiver out of South Carolina. So let's talk about Buffalo. Yep. In terms of stunning moves last night, the Atlanta Falcons take the cake with the 8th overall pick, using it on Michael Penix Jr. after the big free agent acquisition of Kirk Cousins earlier this offseason. Mm-hmm. But the other peculiar moves, the Buffalo Bills, trading from the 28th overall pick when they needed a wide receiver with their nemesis in the AFC, the team in Kansas City, the Chiefs, who have bounced the Bills in 3 of the past 4 postseasons, and Buffalo hands the keys to KC to go up and get the speedster Xavier Worthy, who ran a 4.21 40-yard dash, the fastest in the history of the NFL Combine.
It's funny that you bring it up this way because it's exactly correct. Now, you're supposed to be the Buffalo Bills and worry about your team and say, what's going to work out best for us? We need a plethora of picks here. One guy's not going to make a difference. Maybe we have an eye on 2 guys that we could pick up, maybe in the second round or trade back up. We'll find out if that makes sense. But the Kansas City Chiefs needed a speedy weapon. They wanted to say, who's our new Tyreek Hill, Ben? They got it via the Buffalo Bills, the team you're trying to beat. Now, granted, again, you're supposed to worry about your own team, but come on, man. You're not supposed to give them a shove down the road and say, good luck, buddy. We're going to give you a dominant athlete.
I mean, what a pick for Kansas City. What a peculiar and shocking move from the Buffalo Bills. We'll talk about Buffalo a little bit later on. But Brandon Beane, what are you doing? If Kansas City calls, hang up. NBA playoff reactions next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, well, let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been here a couple of years and then go get the high-profile recruit and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Early Line Live on this Friday. In studio, in person, he is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. Plenty more NFL draft discussion. What we saw from last night, our winners and losers on night number 1 in Detroit. Still setting the stage for day number 2 on this Friday. That's rounds 2 and 3. But we also had a triple header of game 3s yesterday around the association in the NBA playoffs. In Denver's dominance over the Los Angeles Lakers continues, whether it's in the Mile High City or in L.A. If the Nuggets are playing the Lakers, at least in the last 2 years, Denver is going to win. Make it 11 straight victories, DRS, for the Nugs over the Lakers, down by 4 at the break last night. Denver does what it has done each and every time in this playoff series. They have come back. They outscore the Lakers in the second half, and the Nuggets take a commanding 3-0 series lead over L.A. with a 112-105 victory in game number 3. Denver closed as a slight underdog. It was a pick'em pretty much for the entirety of the day, and you said, listen, if it's the Nuggets and the Lakers and Denver is a pick-em price, I'm picking them to win. The Nuggets did just that.
Yeah, there's no price available at this point that you would say to yourself, boy, I just don't want to take the Denver Nuggets against the Los Angeles Lakers. And it's pretty simple. Why? They can't beat them. Like recency bias, I don't know, maybe that goes back 2 or 3 games, over 10 games to a dozen games. No, that just means the team has a perfect matchup on a night-to-night basis. And also, let's remind ourselves, this isn't as if, Ben, we're taking a look and saying to the Denver Nuggets, well, look, hey, they go wire to wire every game. Like the Lakers can't even take the Lakers had a 20-point lead in game number 2, a 12-point lead in game number 3, which included a double-digit lead at the end of the first quarter and a lead at the break. And you are at home in what I always like to call a kitchen sink game, which means you lose this game. There's no more time, basically, for you to come back and win that series unless you pull a miracle. So you figure the Lakers were once again in prime position. And you take a look at Anthony Davis, 43 minutes, 14 of 23 from the floor, 33 points. LeBron James, 42 minutes, 12 of 20 from the floor, 26 points, chips in with 9 assists and 6 rebounds. You are supposed to win those basketball games. But maybe you can't because every night Nikola Jokic gives you an MVP performance and everybody fits perfectly with the pieces to the puzzle for Denver. They won it last year, maybe by surprise. They're not surprising anybody this year. And I don't think it's either a surprise, Ben, that we're looking at this as a possible sweep again. Why? They always beat the Lakers.
AD and LeBron stepped up in a must-win, can't-lose game number 3 now in Los Angeles. By the way, Denver closed as a slight underdog, just the 11th time this year for the Nugs as a dog, 5-6 outright. Denver has beaten the Lakers 11 consecutive times. They swept them last year in the Western Conference Finals. Now a 3-0 series lead here in round number 1 of the 2024 NBA postseason. Also 4 victories in the regular season over the past 2 years against Los Angeles. Make that 11 straight for Denver over L.A. So despite Anthony Davis and LeBron James putting up big numbers last night, when you have 4 of 5 starters for Denver score 20-plus, Nikola Jokic with 24 points, 15 boards, and 9 dimes. But it was actually Aaron Gordon with a team-high 29 points, also added in a double-double. There's very little, it seems, the Lakers can do. And to your point, Donnie, the Lakers have had a double-digit lead in all 3 of these games. They were up by 10 at the end of the first quarter. Shout out to our guy, JY, who will be on the early line on this Friday, recapping everything. He said his play for this game was rather simple. Pick 'em price at the start, leave it alone. At the break, if the Lakers are up, take the Nuggets as an underdog, and it comes through once again. Denver down by 4 at the half. They went outright 112-105. By the way, total last night closed at 217 a hook, so it stays under by that hook. All 3 games in this opening round series between Denver and Los Angeles have stayed under.
And by the way, just demoralizing for the Lakers, I think, is the key. Sometimes you're just getting beat by a better basketball team. It's like, hey, we just didn't have a shot. They were way more talented. That's not the case here, where the Lakers having leads in every single game, which included they probably should have, won game number 2. That was an epic collapse down the stretch. So you figured, how would they come out? What was that first quarter going to be? And it's perfect. You're up double digits. The vibes are good in the building. Hey, we can win this game to get back into the series. And as that game went on, you saw the better basketball team once again, the Denver Nuggets, just employ their will over the Los Angeles Lakers. A win and a cover there. And once again, no surprise. So when Game 4 comes up and we handicap this and say, you know what, who do you think is going to win? No handicap. It's Denver at whatever price you want.
So that's now the conversation because Denver swept the Lakers last year in the Western Conference Finals. The odds makers expect another sweep for the Lakers at the hands of the Nuggets. It's nearly $1.50 favorite. For Denver to sweep this series, 4-0 is minus 148. In DRS, I don't know how you could question that price at this moment. Game number 4, Saturday night at Crypto.com Arena in L.A. Again, Denver closed as a very slight underdog last night for game number 3 in the City of Angels. No longer the case. 3-point favorite for the game. In fact, the money line price as of this moment is Denver at minus 154. It's frankly a better number, a stronger price than the minus 148 for Denver to sweep.
Right.
It is difficult to sweep teams in the postseason. It is incredibly difficult to sweep a team that contains LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But I can't question Denver in this moment. I think the Nuggets do just that on Saturday night. They have the Lakers number for whatever it is, and the vibes around this situation, I don't expect to change in a couple of days.
No, there should be a change in a couple of days. And also, when you're trying to have fun, I love conspiracy theories. They want to make this a longer series. No, they don't, apparently, because the Denver Nuggets are too good for that script that the NBA might be writing at this point. But again, it is a little bit facetious. But that graphic that came up there, I'm telling you right now, though, it's so enticing to say to yourself that this is going 5 at a plus 175 price. Like, hey, Lakers, hey, LeBron James. And I talked about this yesterday on Moneyline with Kevin.
Yeah.
LeBron doesn't have any legacy games yet. He played too many of them. There's no more legacy left for him. But you certainly don't want to go out and say, hey, we tried in L.A. Well, what did you do of your final years? Swept out twice by the Denver Nuggets here. Now, granted, if the Denver Nuggets go on and win an NBA championship, you say, hey, look, that was the champions and they swept us out. But is there pride on the line, or is it LeBron James going like, probably going back to Denver? Like, let me just start my offseason right now. I can rest and get prepped because we're not going to win this anyway. That price point at 5 games is really intriguing to me, though.
Start getting Bronny ready for the 2024 NBA draft. I'm not so sure, but I think it's a great point, DRS, because you would have the Nuggets as a home favorite of probably 7.5, 8 points for what would be a game number 5 in the gentleman's sweep. And if the Lakers take one at home, okay, I don't expect them to go in the Mile High City and steal one from the Nuggets. So you would have Denver at a plus 175 price, which is a money line underdog number for the Nugs in Game 5, and they would be probably at least a 7-point home floor favorite. Not only is Denver, DRS, minus 20,000 to win this series outright, and minus 148 or minus 154 for the Game 4 money line to pull off the sweep for a second consecutive postseason over the Los Angeles Lakers. Denver now, because of what they have done here in the opening round of the NBA playoffs, has flipped to minus money to win the Western Conference. Minus 130 now for Denver to win the Western Conference championship. They are in front of the Oklahoma City Thunder at plus 440. But the intriguing thing is we forecast the future here of this NBA playoffs, unlike a season ago when Denver won the West and, of course, the NBA championship, the Nuggets were the number 1 seed. This year, they would not have home court advantage in a Western Conference Finals if it is against Oklahoma City as OKC, the top seed in the Western Conference.
You're right about that, and it's a good point you bring up, because if you are the best team in your conference and you say just handle your business at home, which a major home court advantage is for the Denver Nuggets being in elevation, yes, they should be the favorite. But I still get back to that same point. If it's the Celtics that we think is a great team in the East, and yes, they are, and I do think they make it to the NBA Finals, and the same thing with the Denver Nuggets, but still price point comes into it. And even though I keep getting slapped in the head by going, you keep talking about price point. Did you watch, like, who's winning? Scotty Scheffler every single week. Did you watch who won the NCAA tournament at UConn with a cheap price? So not just take the cheap price, but still, the West is a gauntlet. To not even have plus money in that gauntlet in the West, I can't deal with that right now.
Plus 210 right now for Denver, by the way. Now less than $1 behind the Boston Celtics. We looked at those odds yesterday. It was about $1 and some change separating the top 2, but it is very clearly those top 2 for the odds makers. Denver out of the West, and Boston, despite being tied at 1-1 against Miami, out of the Eastern Conference. Speaking of the East, Philly gets a win in game number 3. Donnie's cheering. More on the early line next.
people that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Cast the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's
yes.
How we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, what? Let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that are going to be there a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Triples are best. 3 game threes yesterday around the association in the NBA playoffs. Denver's dominance over LA continues. The Nuggets take a 3-0 series, leading the opening round of the Western Conference playoffs. But the first 2 games up yesterday on a Thursday evening were out in the Eastern Conference, including a change of venue to Philadelphia for the first time. Must win, can't lose. When you're down 0-2 returning home, and Philadelphia did win and did not lose. The 76ers, 125-114, the victory over the New York Knicks. Philly was booked as a 5-point home favorite. They cover that number. A total that dropped, which was weird to us, DRS, from the opening 2 games of this series down to 204 at close. Skies way over the number. And Joel Embiid, despite the sore knee, despite dealing with a minor case of Bell's palsy, which is slight paralysis in his face, goes off for a 50-piece, a 50-point performance out of JoJo, including 5 triples, as the Philadelphia 76ers get an 11-point victory, a game they must have had, and they got last night in the city of brotherly love.
It's such an odd series because you're supposed to be looking at your superstar players and seeing how they're actually doing. Now, Joel Embiid is on a different planet right now. You tell me a guy that came back from knee surgery, Bell palsy in the face, must-win situation at home. Yeah, let me drop a 50 spot, which also including a couple of hard fouls early in that game for Joel Embiid, which might have had him looking at a couple flagrants and an ejection here, which didn't happen, and we always want to see the players play out, but if you're a Knicks fan and backer, you probably want to see Joel Embiid gone from that game in the first quarter. But let's get things straight here. The first 2 games, I kept talking about Jalen Brunson. Mm-hmm. Yes, he was scoring some points here, but not efficient at all. So you're saying, how are they 2-0 in this series? What is going to happen when Jalen Brunson gives us his MVP performances like we saw so many times this season? How about 39 points, 13 assists, 13 of 27 from the floor? And the New York Knicks lost that basketball game. Right. It's incredible. Now, some things transpired in the first quarter I do think make a difference here. The one thing that you can always feed off of, Jalen Brunson's going to get to the rim. He's going to kick it out for 3-point shots. You also saw guys like Josh Hart last night go 4 from 8 from 3-point range. But the big 3-point shooter, affectionately known as Tay-Tay, Dante DiVincenzo, he winds up going 0 for 3 from 3-point range, 2 of 7 from the floor, and only 5 points. Now, if you watch that game early in the first quarter, he goes up for a layup, gets whacked in the side of the head, and gets cut basically right next to his eye. And anybody who's played any sports at any time, Once you get hit in the eye, you get a facial cut, a facial fracture, it throws everything off in your game. So a lot of things didn't go the Knicks' way early on, which includes some of the fouls that Joel Embiid was causing. But having said that again, the Sixers needed this game, just like the Los Angeles Lakers. They leaned on their superstar to do something historic, like dropping 50 points in a game number 3. They got this win, and this series, as we always thought, was going to be maybe the best one and go 6 to at least 7 games here.
And some were not pleased with Joel Embiid with what looked like a trip of sorts to Mitchell Robinson, and Robinson had to exit the game, and Embiid stayed in, but when he did, he took advantage of it. Again, a 50-point performance in game number 3 against the New York Knicks. 18 of those points, DRS, coming in the third quarter, second most for JoJo in his NBA playoff career in a single quarter. And that third quarter was the key because Philly was down by 3 at the break to the New York Knicks. And then they just laid it on the Knickerbockers in that third quarter, outscoring New York by 16 points, winning the third 43-27, and never looked back. Philly as a team hit 9 threes in that third quarter. And you saw it there, 19 of 21 from the charity stripe for Joel Embiid, an efficient 13 of 19 from the floor, including 5 made threes. Philly now as a home favorite this year, 22-12 against the spread. And as we change our odds outlook of this series, it's still 2-1. The New York Knicks have that series advantage, but both of these teams had held serve on their home floor. The Knicks still a favorite at minus 235 to win this series outright, but that price was closer to a minus 500 number entering Game 3 last night.
Yeah, we talked about all those prices, too. And forget about just the series price itself, Ben. You take a look at the Eastern Conference odds and the NBA title odds. And we told you yesterday, if you think the Philadelphia 76ers are going to win this game tonight, which was game number 3, you better get those odds now because they're going to start to shrink. And, of course, the Philadelphia 76ers won. The Sixers are still healthy right now, and that price is going to shrink because the prices yesterday were built in saying, like, nobody comes back from 0-2 because when you're down 0-2, it's a great chance, Ben, what? You'll be down 0-3 in the series. That didn't happen now. Series on Sunday, 1 o'clock will be the next matchup. But now this series turns into what we actually thought it was going to be. Forget about if the Sixers got robbed in Game 2 or Joel Embiid's foul should have tossed him out. Let's call it a draw now.
Yeah.
Now we're even up on the board with the refs. Clean slate all the way through. Sixers, if they can pick up that victory on Sunday afternoon to tie that at 2, watch out. Those prices again, dipping right back down.
Spoken like a true Sixers fan right there. But Philadelphia, I think, with a victory in Game 4, even in the series at 2 games apiece, still in a best of 3 then with Madison Square Garden being home floor advantage for New York. I still think the 76ers will be a slight outright favorite. I've got a couple of thoughts on those series prices in just a moment, but I do want to make this point for game number 4 Sunday afternoon, as you mentioned, at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Philly is a 5-point home favorite. Same exact line as game number 3. Covered that number. Again, 22-12. ATS as a home favorite this year. One of the best covering numbers at home as a favorite around the NBA. The total, though, dropped. It was 204 last night. Sky's over. What is the number now? Up by 4 points. The reaction from the odds makers. The over-under for Sunday's Game 4 listed at 208. So, I wanted to bet Philadelphia to win this series outright yesterday, expecting them to win game number 3, knowing the market was going to shorten on their price as the series underdog. I was about to bet the plus 186 outright number before we started here on this Friday on the early line. But here's one of my favorite things about series prices as the odds makers lay them out. There are discrepancies in the marketplace where you can find value based on how you think a series plays out. And, Donnie, Philadelphia has 2 ways of winning this. In 6 or in 7. Philly to win in 6, plus 410. Philly to win in 7, plus 480. So instead of the plus 186, I put a little bit of both, a half unit on both.
Yeah.
And I love those prices because it's the 2 potentials for Philadelphia.
And also good ways to hedge out of those as well, getting that good of a price point here where you take a look at the Philadelphia 76ers to win in 7, but you still think the Knicks will win that game. You could do some things as well. But I like this going forward. I just hope we don't have any true injuries here on out, which to me as a Sixers fan, you're always worried about the big guy Joel Embiid, where, again, he scored 50 points and he's having, like, stress in his face here where he can't. It's unbelievable what he goes through with himself. Just hope he's healthy all the way through, but a big-time win, and easily, Ben. Looking at that total, Sunday goes up to 208. Yeah. Give me the over again. I can't believe we're pricing these under 210.
Still think it's too small. Great call on Brunson, by the way. 39 points, over 28.5, 13 of 27 from the floor. We go to Orlando up next.
people that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
A popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you for the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Cast the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, well, let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been there a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit, and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here, because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Our third and final Game 3 to break down from last night's slate on a Thursday around the association was the first game of the evening in Orlando. DRS, all three scenarios last night. The road team had a 2-0 series lead, holding serve on home floor in the opening two games of the opening round of the NBA playoffs. So it was a must-win situation for all home teams back on their home floor last night. The Lakers, nope. They've lost 11 straight to the Denver Nuggets. Philadelphia, yes, covering as a 5-point home favorite, winning by double digits against the New York Knicks. And the question for the Orlando Magic, this young team there in Florida, also the answer was yes. Orlando winning big against Cleveland last night, nearly by 40 points. And finally, some offense for Orlando, who in the opening two games in the land had not scored more than 86 points. They're the first team in this series to break through the century mark with 121. 121-83, the victory for the Magic over the Cavaliers. Orlando covers as a 2.5-point home favorite, and a total that worked its way up to 201.5.
Yeah.
Does go over, but because Orlando scored 121, Cleveland did not add much with only 83.
I like the under in this game, too. And I saw that final score, and you see the 121, like, oh, that's a wrap. But then you see the 83, you start doing the math in your head, like, oh, no, just misses by a fraction here. But also, Orlando back in the series, and Ben, quite frankly, this probably is what's supposed to happen. Cleveland wasn't spectacular this season, particularly on the road. They were actually over 500 at 22-19 overall. But when you take a look at Orlando, the one thing that we were updating on a day-to-day basis was this is a young team, but you know what? They play really well at home, and they cover point spreads here. Now, did we see a win that was close to 40 points? Not necessarily at all. I actually thought Cleveland should have been the play last night again because I was just so uninspired from what I saw over the first two games from the Orlando Magic. But credit the young guys for bouncing back. Paulo Banchero in a big spot, 13 of 26 from the floor, 31 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists for a plus 28. When you're just looking at the starters between the two ball clubs here, it was clear Orlando was the better team right off the jump and smash. They never gave a chance for the Cleveland Cavaliers to get back into this basketball game. That's a great sign for a young team trying to win.
Again, the first time in this series a team has scored 100 points or more. Orlando does so with 121. The losing team in each of these three games to start off this opening set in the NBA playoffs has not scored more than 86 points. Offense for the losing team has been at a premium, but the Magic were the best cover team in the association all year long. The best cover team as a home favorite in the NBA as well. Now 20-6 against the spread at home, led by Paolo Banchero last night in the 31 points for the reigning NBA Rookie of the Year. So we do go over 201.5 slightly. The home team in this series, has covered every game as well, booked as a favorite. Cleveland winning by double digits in both in the land. Orlando by nearly 40 points last night. Nobody for the Cavaliers, DRS, scored more than 15. Again, offense has been hard to come by in this series. Does it change your outlook on the odds for this opening round set at all?
It does, because one of the teams that I took in a parlay here at the FanDuel Sportsbook was included to have a win in the series by the Cleveland Cavaliers. I still think that's going to happen, but we do live in a day-to-day society where you show me what you did, and that's how I'll look forward to it. What have you seen last? And what I saw last was Orlando is really back in this series in a big way. And that graphic that was posted up there, and I agree with it now. Game 6 plus 165, Game 7 plus 165. It's going 6 or 7. It really is.
Orlando's team total yesterday, 103.5. That does go over, obviously, in a big way. This will be the first game tomorrow of the set that we have on a Saturday. 4 games, a quadruple header in the NBA postseason tomorrow. And the numbers, the exact same for Game 4 as they were for Game 3. Orlando, 2.5-point home favorite, total at 201 and a hook. You going to go under tomorrow?
Well, I got to stick to the plan, because if teams are still scoring around 80 points a game on one side, sooner or later they're going to slow. Again, 121 on one side. You almost got that under, which was around 200. Yeah, I'm going under. I'm going under the entire series.
Yeah, why not?
Every game.
You had a team score 121 points, and the total went over by 2.5 points because the other team only scored 83. Now, Cleveland, as the odds makers just showed you, still very much in command of this series. 2-1 series advantage, home floor advantage, plus 190 for Cleveland. It's the shortest correct score available in that market for the Cavaliers to win in 5 games. That's 4 games to 1, and Cleveland a minus 375 favorite outright to win this series. So, 3 games in the NBA playoffs last night. 3 more on this Friday, another triple header. 4 games tomorrow. So much NBA playoff basketball to break down. But when hour number 2 starts in just over 2 minutes, we hit the diamond around Major League Baseball. Up next.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been here a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Quotes coming out about Embiid. Oh, he's a warrior. You'll never get him off the court. You're just telling me he's an injury. He's one slip and fall away from what's not seeing him anymore in this series.
I would have sat him because there was only 1 day between the 2 games. It's 2 days between games 2 and games 3, and it's 2 days between games 3 and game 4.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coach just fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.